Can I start? Okay. Good evening and welcome to the new school year 2020-2021. This is the meeting of the Special Education Advisory Committee of the Halton District School Board for Tuesday, September the 15th. Given the need to practice social distancing and due to COVID-19 pandemic, we are holding this meeting remotely through a video conference. This meeting is being recorded. The Vice Chair, Trustee Oliver, will start with a roll call to record who is in attendance. Please answer yes, raise your hand, or say present. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I'll just remind everybody to please stay on mute unless you're speaking. And if you want to go on the speakers list, please put your hand up in the chat box by indicating hand or something like that, and then we'll know that you would like to speak or ask a question. All right, starting with Association for Bright Children, Deidre Wu. Deidre on the line? I think she was going to be late.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Autism Ontario, Lisa Cameron? No. Easter Seal Society, Melissa Dockery? Halton Down Syndrome Association, Sophia Siddiqui? Or Mike Brown? Learning Disabilities Association of Hamilton, Diane Vanderbosch. I see Diane.
Sorry. Yes, I'm here.
Yeah. And I see Allison is online as well. And voice, Judy Shields.
Sorry, Joanna, I think Mike just joined.
Okay,
Mike,
thank you.
Mike, I just let him in, thanks.
Okay, thank you. And for voice, Judy Shields. Members at large, James Baldwin.
Here.
And Diane Miller. I see Diane's on line, just maybe muted. And we have Chair Lucille Morris. And for trustees, we have Margot Shuttleworth, Tracy L. Harrison, and Heather Garretts.
Good evening.
And from staff, we have Mark Zonneveld, Sean Marks, the Principal of Student Services, and I see we have Rebecca Newcomb. Mark, would you like to introduce Rebecca?
I would, thanks very much. As you all know, Margaret Pugh retired in June and is enjoying the beginning of her retirement. And we are thrilled to have Rebecca join us as our new Vice Principal of Special Education. Rebecca has a secondary background as a teacher and administrator, and I'll let her say a few words if she'd like, or just say hello.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. So nice to meet you all. Really looking forward to working with you. Like Mark said, secondary administrator and teacher. I was a special education teacher from the beginning of my career. So this is where my heart is. So I'm so happy to be here.
Thanks, and we're thrilled to have Rebecca on our team.
Welcome, Rebecca. And over to you, Lucille.
We will begin by honoring the land. Halton, as we know it today, is rich in history and modern traditions of many First Nations and the Métis. From the Anishinaabe to the Atawandaron, the Haudenosaunee, and the Métis, these lands surrounding the Great Lakes are steeped in Indigenous history. As we gather today on these treaty lands, we have the responsibility to honor and respect the four directions: land, water, plants, animals, ancestors that walked before us, and all the wonderful elements of creation that exist. We would like to acknowledge and thank the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation for sharing their traditional territory with us. We now need to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting.
Okay, James, would you move a motion to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting?
Sure.
And Mike, will you second that motion? Okay, I see that in the chat box. So just going forward, Mike, you need to click on the microphone icon to unmute yourself. Thank you.
Next up is the approval of our June 2nd meeting minutes. Are there any errors or omissions? If you wish to speak, please indicate so in the chat box.
Okay, I'm not seeing anybody with a hand up. So Allison, will you move the motion to approve the minutes of June 2nd meeting?
I'll make that motion to approve, yes.
Okay. Diane Miller, will you second that motion? Diane, you need to go off mute. Okay, in Diane's absence, can we ask James to second that motion?
Diane has said yes in the chat room. Sometimes
Oh,
people have
yes.
difficulty with their audio.
Okay, yep, thank you. Okay, so that's approved.
Okay. We are now up to the action items. The chair and vice chair election timing. At our May meeting, we discussed the opportunity to hold elections for the SEAC chair and the vice chair positions, and it was decided that we would hold the elections in December for a January start. I hope that you all gave this some thought over the summer months, and hopefully some of you are interested in putting your name forward. Joanne and I are both happy to mentor and to answer any questions or to help prepare anyone interested in taking on these roles. Joanna?
Unmute, Joanna.
You're on mute.
Unmute, Joanna.
Thank you. All right. Each term, there are 2 trustee representatives who are voting members and 2 alternate non-voting trustee reps. This term, the trustees thought that for the sake of equal opportunity and full participation on SEAC, that we would consider changing our status midway through the term. This means that voting members would become non-voting members and vice versa as of January 2021. This change in membership status would require that Margot and I, as the voting members, submit a letter to the Board of Trustees notifying of this change, and that this letter be included in time for Trustees Board Committee striking process, hence by December for inclusion in the board package for the first meeting of January. The 4 of us are still open to making this change, while also being flexible, given that everything is very different for everyone at this time. I raise this so that you know that this may be taking place and that you understand the reason for the change in the individual's trustees membership status. Also to remind you that trustee reps who are non-voting members, and the same goes for all SEAC non-voting members, may not put their name forward in the election. There's also one more consideration that we need to take into account. At the May meeting, Allison pointed out that if we follow suit A 2-year term as a chair may be too long for some association representatives. And so I would like to clarify that the length of the chair and vice chair term is something for the group to decide, and there is flexibility. There are 2 more years in the SEAC term and lots of opportunity for those of you interested to fill the chairing roles. As Lucille stated, both she and I'm sure the same can be said for my trustee colleagues, are very happy to chat with anyone who is interested in putting their name forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. At this point, as per our May discussion, we have an informal agreement to hold the elections in December for a January start. As there's no requirement about the timing of the midterm elections, we have the flexibility to hold the elections either at the end of the December meeting or at the beginning of the January meeting. And this will give time for the trustee reps to sort out their membership status. Let's go around and see if we can land on the timing of the election and address any new questions.
Okay, so maybe we'll just go, I'll just kind of look at my screen and call out your name if there's a question or comment you'd like to make or something you'd like to propose. This will be a good time. So next on my screen is Allison. Allison.
Sorry, I'm just trying to find my unmute button there. So just want to clarify again. So non-voting members cannot be the chair or the vice chair. That's correct? Okay, so you have to be a voting member. Okay, and in terms of the election, my recommendation would be that it would be at the end of the December meeting. It just seems more sensible than starting off a new meeting and having the change of everybody as part of that meeting. It would probably make sense at the end of the year to close off and then allow the new people to be ready for their next meeting in full. That's my perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lucille, do you wanna just kind of go around looking at the faces on your screen, and or did you want me to facilitate this?
I have a few faces. I have Diane. Diane, are you?
There are 2 Dianes, don't forget.
Oh, Diane van der Bosch. Sorry.
What are you asking me, Lucille?
I'm asking about your interest in being the chair or the vice chair, and also what you feel about the timing of the December versus January elections.
Okay, so I think what was suggested at the end of the December meeting, so that the new chair, vice chair can start in January, makes sense to me. And the other question, no, I am not interested in either position.
Thank you. James?
I think it's a good idea to vote on December as well. That's all I have to say. I agree with Allison and Diane.
Okay. I'm sorry. I don't. I see somebody else's name, but I can't see on my screen who that is. Is it?
We've got Mike Brown.
I've got Mike Brown and I've got Diane Miller. Sorry.
I will just agree with what has been said. The end of December after the December meeting makes perfect sense to have a transition. And I think it also gives people some more time to consider who would like to maybe put their name in.
Okay.
Yeah. And just to add, I point, we're not seeking solid commitment. We're really just looking at the process so that we have a plan for going forward. And there's still some time.
Is there anyone that I have not asked? Has everybody given their point of view?
Yeah. Sorry, Lucille, Deirdre has just joined, James has said, and also I would like to say something, but I'll wait till after if Deirdre has something to say first.
Deirdre? Do you have something to say on Welcome.
Hi, thank you. I'm actually just driving, just joining the meeting and not quite sure what we're discussing right now. I think we're talking about changing positions for the new year, I think.
Yes, but the majority seem to be recommending that we hold our elections at the end of the December meeting for a January start, and we were also just looking for a interest in the possibility of the chair or the vice chair position prior to that December meeting, and asking people to think about it.
Okay, so
yes, yes, I agree. I think that it's a good idea to do the voting at the end of the year for the new year. And I would consider one of those positions. I think we talked about that previously before you took the seat. So yeah. We can talk about that again. If there's no one else who is interested, I can put my name in the hat there, and we can talk further about it at that point. I would consider that, yeah.
Thank you, Deirdre. We also, I think I see Sophia has joined the meeting. So, Sophia? I think you've turned the sound off on your computer. Not muted it, because I can see, but I can't hear you. Okay. Okay, so I think we will move forward then with the agenda. If any.
Just hang on, Lucille. I have a point of order, a question for Mark.
Okay.
Is Mark there? Yeah. So given that we have consensus to hold the elections at the end of the December meeting for the new individuals to take over in January, do we need to have a formal motion about that?
I don't think so. I don't think there's anything that's stipulating that it has to be a specific time. This is an agreement within the group. We can just go ahead with that.
Okay. And we should also give some consideration to the length of the term if people are in agreement, or is that something you want to leave for now? Would the term be 1 year or 2 years or anything in between? Margot?
I think in recognizing that it can be seen as quite an extra bit of work, I think it would be better for it to be a single year per term. That's what it has been up until recently. And again, I would encourage, I'm glad to hear from Deirdre that she's interested in looking at pursuing it, because I do think it's nice to have voices from, the community at the table as well. So, yeah, thank you, Deirdre. And again, that's my question is, again, I think, further to Allison's point, that having it at the end of the meeting makes so much sense, just because it's not starting a brand new meeting with brand new feet under the table. So I think that's a smart decision. So those are my points.
Good. Okay, Mark, it's over to you.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Great to see you again. Hope you've had a great summer. And if you have kids in school, that they've had a good start. I know it's been a start of some anxiety for some excitement for others, some challenges. But I've heard many accounts from schools about kids and staff being so excited to be back, that the first days have gone really well by and large. And we're thrilled that we've had a successful start to the year. So so great to see our kids back. So when we were planning the agenda, we thought we should spend all our time really talking about the reopening, that would be what would interest people most at this point in time. And we'll get into some specifics about how that applies to our students with special needs towards the end of what I'm going to share with you. So that's what we'll dig into. So I've got a bit of a slideshow for you, and I'm going to share that with you in a moment. A reminder, I see everyone's mic is off. That's great. That avoids an echo. During the slideshow, I suggest you do two things. One, turn your camera off, because that seems to reduce the amount of lag time and glitches we have together. So if you could turn your camera off would be great. And also a reminder about how to see the slideshow in full screen. So if you go to the three dots on the bottom right of your screen and go to change layout, and in there go to spotlight. And if you do that, then you will get the slideshow centering in your which I'm about to do. I realize I have to share this. Here we come. Make sure I have this showing. Is everyone seeing my slideshow? Can someone give me a verbal?
Yeah. Yes,
Yep.
we are. Yes, we are, Mark.
Okay, thank you. So here we go. I'm sure you can appreciate how much has gone into planning for the reopening of schools. We are so proud of our staff, certainly in student services, but all across the board have worked so hard. I know of many staff that didn't get any holiday this summer because they worked nonstop to make sure that our schools are ready for our students. And from the delay in our start, we would normally open September 8th. I'm sure you can appreciate that we did not do that without a great deal of effort happening beforehand, and yet still not being able to ready and do it right on September the 8th. So part of that is just the volume of work. Part of that is the changes that came at us from the Ministry of Ed and from Public Health. And I'm not blaming anybody, because there's been so much happening. This is unprecedented for everybody in all sectors and areas. And I know that everyone's been working really hard to support our kids and families. So hats off to all of our staff for all their work. So I'm going to work through this document. I follow the same format of a reopening guide that we've created for our staff. And that guide, as of today, because it keeps growing as we realize there's more we have to add to it, it's now 91 pages long. And it's probably, well, at least double that length with all of the links that are in it. So there's just so much here that is schools have had to account for, plan for, and implement in order to welcome our students back. So 91 pages and growing. So what I've put in here is a condensed, not even condensed version, just a snapshot of what's in that reopening guide for schools. But I've summarized it here because I want you to have some perspective on the main areas that are touched upon within this guide that all schools have had to implement. So the first area of focus is the healthy and safe facilities. The overall thing to keep in mind here is this concept of layers of protection. So you may have heard this already in your own lives living in COVID, but the idea that not one action is enough to protect ourselves and each other, to keep ourselves safe and healthy. So those layers include things like that daily self-assessment, so important, that we just stay home if we have any symptoms, which is why that information's gone home to our staff and students. Our cleaning protocols have really been stepped up in schools. The importance of hand sanitizing and wash, limiting visitor access, so important, and the mandatory masks. Mandatory masks are from grades 1 to 12 and are optional in kindergarten. I'm going to stop along the way here and take questions. So I'll let you know in a moment when I'm at a question point. Actually, I'm sorry, I've got this in sections. So I'll stop there for a moment. Anyone with a question? I'm going to pull the hands up here. I don't see anyone indicating a hand up in our chat box, so I'm going to keep going. So I'm going to move on to school operations. So all the things that go into operating a school every day and the kinds of things that we've done as part of our reopening of schools. So one is that regular communication with families. Those of you on the receiving end of that got a number of messages throughout the summer and then towards the end of August and now in the fall, all updating you on our progress towards reopening, sometimes asking for input, but we tried to really keep our families in the loop. In August, families, when it was shared by the ministry what the reopening would look like in boards, and it did vary depending on which board you were in, but when they shared that, we shared that out to our families and then asked that they complete an intent to return survey where they indicated if their children were returning into an in-person school or virtual. And so our schools, the in-person schools opened September 10th as a sort of an orientation, optional orientation opportunity then. The same on the 11th, we cohorted our schools in half at that point. And then our students were in full-time yesterday in the in-person schools. And then our virtual schools are beginning tomorrow. Just because it's been quite the challenge to get 4 virtual schools up and running. We have 1 secondary and 3 elementary schools accommodating, you'll see the numbers in a moment, a lot of students. So that's been quite a challenge for all boards to get that up and running. And also transportation has been a significant amount of work. As you can imagine, when you have school buses that may have held 50, 60, 70 students, if they're really full, to now go 2 to a seat is down, it pushes us down to 48. And so the amount of, number one, new buses and hiring that had to happen, and also new routes, redesigned routes and stops all had to happen in a very, very short time, was a significant challenge. So we have 2 to a seat, masks, seating plans, and no courtesy seats. We told parents this last spring because we knew right away this would be very difficult. So if you're not familiar, a courtesy seat is for students that live within the walk distance, so they aren't eligible for busing, but if there's an empty seat, we will take requests for students to be able to ride if a seat is empty. And so we have thousands of students that in the past have ridden on courtesy seats, and we knew right away we would not be able to grant those this year. So that was part of that plan as well. Continuing with the operation of schools, we have designated entries and exits for students in different classrooms in different parts of the school, all to limit the number of students going through those doors, and the wayfaring that you see in your grocery store aisles and other places, the same as in our schools. School supervision had to be re-looked at carefully about how do we keep students in their cohorts. And by cohorts, I mean that class of students stays together in those in-person schools. So, and don't mix with each other. That's our guidance from public health right now. So that's the approach we're taking, both in the building and out. So we've developed zones in many schools in order to try and contain students within those groups. This is all aimed at preventing the spread. And you can see the education elements that we've been doing with our staff and with our families through information, and certainly with our students in class. We're talking with them about how to prevent the spread. Our before and after school programs are continuing, and we don't have to look after what's happening with our childcare operators. They have a whole set of parameters from their ministry that they have to follow, but they are using our facilities and are responsible for a complete cleaning period before the students start to use those rooms, and also in the mornings when their programs are in their first. There's a cleaning protocol that has to be followed before the class is able to enter. So all that is looked after by our childcare providers. And then finally, food security and safe handling. Programs that would involve the cooking of food and those kinds of things are on pause right now. If they can be done safely with a food handling protocol that students would have learned as part of some of the high school programs, some of those may be occurring. And then things like our breakfast programs, those kinds of things have all been rejigged as best possible so that there isn't any touching of the food of other students. That contact is very limited. We know there's a surprisingly high percentage of students that come to school without breakfast each day, and so our food programs are pretty important. So I'll pause there. Any questions about school operations? Seeing none, I'll move on. So our current enrollment.
Mark, Diane. Mark.
Oh, sorry, Diane.
Diane has a question in the chat room. She asks, question vulnerability in programs. Do you see it?
Yeah, I see it there. School bus, outside distancing, picture of students going into a school. Yet on the bus, 2 per seat. Yeah, that's a great question, Diane. I guess I'll go back again to the layers of protection, right? Back in that right here, this concept of layers. So the layers are many. One is the daily self-assessment. If you're not feeling well, don't come. If you are coming, then things like hand washing, masks, social distancing. If you're not feeling well, then you need to be separated from your cohort and go home. Teaching kids not to touch their face. All those are different things that the more that we do, the greater the chance that we are protecting ourselves, the higher the level of protection. There are going to be times when we can't do all those things. So, for example, a student who needs some direct physical contact by staff in order to be well supported, whether it be their personal care needs or mobility or their behavior, whatever that might be, our staff are still going to do those things. So the social distancing that we want to see, those 2 meters or 6 feet, is going to be not practiced in that time. So that one layer, you could say, well, isn't that a problem? It's not the best, but we have all the other layers, including PPE, that help everyone stay safe. So when it comes to riding a bus, our students aren't as distanced as they would be at other times, but they are wearing masks. Masks are mandatory on buses, and so they're not as close as they were before, because we would sometimes have 3 to a seat. Now, there isn't a limitation that way in terms of the Ministry of Transport or the road laws on that. So we have some pretty crowded buses. So the students aren't as congested in there, and they are wearing masks on the buses. So I hope that answers that for you, Diane. And then the self-assessment, I see your other question there. Yeah, there's a whole protocol on which our schools are just being informed of this week, because we've already had some students feeling ill and needing to go home. So we've been developing that protocol with public health around them needing to go home. So we've had students go home in, I don't know how many, but I've talked to half a dozen principals in the last day, and every one of them had students go home because they weren't feeling well. And whether it's COVID or some students have said, I have allergies, so I'm going to have a runny nose. Yeah, but it's also a potential symptom of COVID. So all that protocol we've been following, and public health has laid out what that looks like in terms of the requirements to be tested. If you're tested and you're clear, you can come back. So all that is ongoing as we speak, but that's part of it. Sophia, I see your question there. Yes, I didn't mention everything in these slides because there's so much to all this, but one of the things we do have in place is in some classes, not many, but in some classes, we do have the plexiglass barriers or shields in place. So those are there for instances where the staff may have to spend extended periods of time, longer than 15 minutes, in close proximity to students. So for example, some of our psychology staff who are doing assessments with students would be using a plexiglass barrier because some of the assessments are quite long. And other times when either the staff and or the student need to see the mouth of the other, the plexiglass barrier can allow for that. Plus, we're also getting, excuse me, a product that's been around for a while, but still fairly new, these clear masks that provide, they're medical grade, but they allow you to see through to the person's mouth. And we're bringing those in for right now, because they're in short supply with the ministry. The ministry is providing all our PPE to us. They are masks that allow to see the mouth. So they're right now for students with deaf and hard of hearing needs, where this teacher needs to be able to show them their mouth, their lips. The teacher is wearing those. You might ask why they're limited, and it's because the medical masks that we provide to staff are about 5 cents. The clear masks are about $3.50 each, and they're not reusable. So every educator that works with that deaf and hard of hearing student needs to wear one of those, another one each day. So quite pricey. So that's why we're limiting the use of those masks. And Sophia, your next question. So if a life skills teacher requests the plexiglass, it depends on the needs of their students. It's not an automatic. It depends on the profile of the students in that class. And so those requests come into our department and we decide to approve them. I've been getting them every day. Sometimes the school might ask me for 6 and I might give them 3 because they've kind of gone overboard in their request. I'm sure you can appreciate, we're millions overspent through all of this. We're asking the ministry about more funding. So we have to be good stewards of our resources and make sure that we are spending those dollars wisely and making sure that, if a class really needs that plexiglass barrier, we're providing it, but it's not just a free-for-all. So I'll move back to our slides here. And okay, I don't see any more hands. So taking a look at our enrollment, you may have seen in the news some of the big numbers that have gone on with our enrollments in the virtual schools. This has been pretty overwhelming for most boards, including us. So look at our elementary numbers there. Can you see my pointer on the screen? Is that showing up for you? Someone give me an auditory.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Thank you. So take a look at our in-person numbers here, that total, and the number of students in the virtual schools. So we have 3 virtual schools that we have created. You can see they're pretty darn big. We have, I think, 6 administrators for both the East and the North. And is it 3 or 4 for the West? And even then, that's nowhere near what we would have in person. But a big challenge here is we don't necessarily truly know what the work is. There are a number of things that these administrators won't have to do that you would have to do in an in-person building. But at the same time, there is some significant challenges. So we have staffed these schools as best we predict or is needed at this time. All of our class sizes are at the same levels of our in-person schools, what those would normally be. And we do have supports in there, such as special education teachers and EAs. We've assigned our professional services staff, allocations of those staff to these schools. Those are all in place. But still, you can see that 30% of our elementary population is in virtual. So really significant. And then if you look down at our secondary, you have a smaller, right? We're down to around 21, 22% is the total there. But we do have, by and large, and you'll see this in a moment, the number of students with special needs doesn't match what you see here. So we don't have 30% of our students with IEPs in virtual. More of them have stayed in person, both in elementary and secondary. So, but I'll just go back again to these 2 numbers, the 13,500 and the 3,500. That has been an enormous challenge for us to start up those 4 schools in basically a few weeks. It's been really challenging. Margot, I see your question. So a number of factors went into the staff that went into the virtual schools. And I'm not going to say the order because I'll probably get it wrong. If someone from HR was here, they could tell you. So I'll tell you the factors that I remember. One is we have some staff who are medically more vulnerable to COVID, and so they have a medical exemption. They can still work, they just can't be in a building with students. So we have staff who are working virtually in the virtual schools. So that's one group. We have other staff who are they may be living with family members who are vulnerable, and so we've tried to accommodate them in the virtual school. We also have staff who were, because they're I'm sure you can appreciate, our in-person schools shrunk by 30%. So we've reduced the number of classes there drastically. We have some schools that went from 1,000 students down to 500. So really big drops in numbers. So we have staff who were declared surplus at those schools. They were placed in the virtual assignments. And then finally, in some cases where we still had the need for staff and not enough to fill the spots through what else I mentioned, we then took volunteers who wanted to take the virtual schools. And then once all that happened, we then matched up their qualifications, experience with the assignments that needed to be filled. Some jobs were advertised because they weren't filled yet, so that was able to happen as well within our system. And so the jobs were filled. I'm just looking at your.
Sorry, order, Mark.
Yeah.
Since people are posting their questions in the chat box,
Yeah.
For the sake of the full group, for the sake of those watching the video, and for the sake of the recording, can you please read out the full question before you answer it? Thank you.
Great idea. Yeah. Sorry about that. I think I've answered your question there, Margot, about how the staff are selected. So, Allison, your question is the allocation of EAs and certs the same, et cetera, the same as the virtual schools? No, it's not across. The allocation is a bit higher in the in-person schools, and that's because we looked at the number of students with IEPs, and not just with IEPs, but their specific profiles, and could see that the needs were higher in the in-person schools. So we kept the allocations higher there than in the virtual schools. Deirdre, will we receive information from the virtual schools like we have for the other schools? I'm not sure what you mean, receive information. Did I already answer that, Deirdre, or is there, can you give me some more of what you want there?
Yeah, we just have information on who their certs are, or contact information just for the other schools, generally speaking. Will we have that information for the certs for the virtual schools, or information like who's there, or no?
Yeah,
Yeah?
that will still come.
Great.
Yeah, I appreciate, how patient everyone's been. Again, in less than a month, we've had to start up 4 schools from scratch and figure out all the enrollments, build the classes, know who the kids are, build the classes, place and hire staff, do their assignments, figure out all those operational pieces, and communicate with families. And it's been challenging. Maybe I've said that too much, but so yeah, those schools are all trying to get all their, what we consider sort of the regular information out to families as quick as they can. Allison, your question, will you be able to provide the breakdown of children with exceptionalities by distance? Are we able to track how well the kids are doing online? Were the most skilled staff assigned to the self-contained classes? So to the first question, yeah, we are trying to collect some data on what all this is looking like as we move ahead. I've got some more information coming up around IEPs. I'll give you some of those details in a moment. And then the most skilled staff, absolutely the principals and vice principals have tried to match the qualifications and skill sets with the needs. So I was on the phone with one of the virtual school principals yesterday, where she's looking at her cohort of teachers of self-contained and how best to do that matchup. So yeah, they're doing their best. Diane, are students able to switch from in-person to online if already in person, or is there a wait list? So this has been a question from a number of parents across the province, is can they switch whenever they want? And the answer is no, because of all the challenges I just articulated to you. So if we had, you might say, well, I'm just one parent that wants to switch from the in-person to the virtual, right? But we have over 100 schools, 105. So as soon as you have, let's say 25 parents that all want to do that in grade 5, well, we need to staff that. We need to add a class to that virtual school and figure out then how are we going to do that across the system, because we might not be able to, that's the other challenge. Do we go and collapse a class in the middle of October? Do we say, oh, sorry, this grade 5 class here, you've shrunk by 8 students who went virtual. We're going to close this class now and redistribute you amongst the other grade 5s in your school. Now that'll go over not well at all amongst those students and families. So we're already way overspent. We've had to go deep into our reserves in order to make all this work. And we're still scrambling to find money to cover all these costs because they are extensive in order to make all this work. So no, families can't go and switch mid-year. We are looking at 2 things. One, you can't go from distance to virtual because our virtuals are so stretched right now. That we're looking at happening in November when it's mid semester reporting time in secondary and midterm progress reports in elementary. So at that time, we're looking at an opportunity to change formats. We don't have a process or criteria or anything for that yet. We're just trying to get the schools open. So that will come. The second thing is that for students who want to go from virtual to in-person, because our schools aren't all maxed out the way the virtual is, we will consider that, and that needs, it starts by the parent expressing that desire, and then the 2 principals will talk and see if it's possible, which is the process we would follow with any requests of that type during the school year, during a normal year. So that's when that opportunity would come. Diane, your next question. Was there any feedback for those with IEPs regarding online learning for those continuing with online learning? We either have an IEP or we're not formally identified but receive additional support. How were any concerns, difficulties addressed? Great question. We did a survey out to all families and students back in June, asking about their online experiences with the virtual distance learning. So we got some great feedback that was really helpful. Probably the number 1 piece of feedback in there was that the more direct contact that students had, live synchronous contact that students had with their educators, the better, which is really no surprise. So, which is why you'll see in a later slide the government being pretty specific about the need for synchronous learning, right? Live interaction with your educators, your teachers. So there were a number of other really helpful pieces of information which were great, which helped inform our practice going forward. And in school boards, we'll be the first to admit that what we did in the spring wasn't the ideal of what we would plan to do. But everyone knows that came at us in a matter of weeks, that we had to go from being open to closed because of COVID. So now that we've had more time to plan, it's still been a scramble, but we know so much more about how to deliver good learning online. And so that's, we're going to do a better job of that. Margot, part B of my question was training. I'm going back up, Margot, to look.
So sorry, Mark, it was what training have we given our teachers for the virtual schools?
Great, thank you. So
particularly in the area of addressing students who might have those exceptionalities.
Yeah. So we've done a few things. One, through the spring, we offered regular professional development from our program department for elementary and secondary teachers for all kinds of ways to improve their online instructional delivery and online learning. We also decided in the spring that no matter what happened this fall, we needed all secondary teachers to become proficient in using a learning management program called Brightspace. And so we had some staff who were already very proficient, which was great. But for those for whom this was new, we offered a four-stage learning approach to Brightspace, that if you didn't know it, you had to take it so that you were ready for virtual in the fall. A message we delivered pretty early was the best way you can prepare for whatever comes in the fall is become a good online virtual teacher. So we offered that, and then we offered regular learning opportunities around G Suite, which is the Google education platform for our elementary teachers. So those were offered all the time through the spring. We also had a big uptake in August of teachers taking all those different learning sessions to get ready for this. So I won't kid you that everyone's proficient and perfect and ready to go. That they're not. This is a totally new environment for everyone. So teachers or educators are learning as fast as they can. We have teachers that we hired yesterday for some of our assignments because of the increased number of staff we've had to add. All through the last couple of weeks, we've been hiring. So there are people who are learning real quick how to work in a virtual environment. I'm looking, I see, thank you. Are there any questions I didn't get to? I don't see any more. Okay, so that's the enrollment slide. This is as of September 10th. The numbers have changed a bit since then, but we're basically saying no more. If you didn't get your request in by the deadline, you're staying put for now. If we have some people have asked me, what about a student who's really, really struggling? They're whether it's their learning profile or their social emotional state in the environment they're in. If it's something else, those extreme cases, certainly we'll consider those, and principals will address those just like they have always done. So we do, we have rules in place for good reason, not because we're trying to be difficult, but because we have to manage a big school system. But if there are exceptional circumstances that really require us to consider doing something different, we do, and we've always done that. So, okay, I move along. I'm just conscious that I'm talking so much here. So learning and instruction, this is the next section of our reopening guide. So in elementary, you probably know that we have regular class sizes, and I put /cohort because we're really trying to emphasize that with our students and our staff, that those classes have to stay as a cohort. They don't mix with others. That is their group, and I'm sure you can appreciate, because if there is a case, that limits the exposure of others. So that's part of that, helping the kids understand how do we prevent the spread. In secondary, the board has, the province has decided which boards will continue as normal, where they have full classes and carry on, and which boards are considered called adaptive. And Halton has been, and our Catholic counterpart have both been deemed adaptive boards, which means that we have to limit to classes of 15, I'll say ish, because it's, there may be some a bit smaller, a bit larger. And I'm going to pause because Director Miller has just let me know he's come from another meeting he had. He wanted to join us earlier but couldn't, but he's with us for a moment now. So I'm sure you'd all like a pause from hearing me talk, and we'll welcome Director Miller.
Thanks, Mark, and sorry I'm late and I can't stay very long. I'm on another meeting, which is quite interesting actually. The participants in the meeting, there's one from South Africa, one from the Philippines, two from Vancouver, the UK, Panama, Colombia, various educators around the world, and we're working on a project together. But I wanted to thank you all. I know this is super challenging, and in particular, super challenging more so for the students of what your organizations represent. We know that this is not at all easy for anybody, and the reports for the first 2 days of school have all been pretty good, but we're just 2 days into it, so I appreciate that. That's pretty premature to say this is successful. But we have worked hard, and we have made decisions to try to give that extra level of support that we're able to give to students with special needs and students from the organizations in which you represent. So I know many of you will have questions for Mark, and I'm sure as we go into the school year, more and more questions will emerge and more challenges will emerge, and some of which we could never have anticipated, as we see that all along. So I just wanted to say a few words and welcome you and thank you all for your ongoing efforts to support the kids, but to make us better as a board. I think we need your advice even more now than we ever have needed it because of the circumstances in which we are all facing. So unless there's questions, Mark, specific to me, I'll stay for a bit longer, but I can turn it back to you if you want. But
yeah, thanks, Stuart. Any questions for Stuart? Anyone?
And hi, Diane. How are you?
We have our chat box going on the side, Stuart. So I don't see any questions for you right now.
All right.
We're going to carry on.
Yeah, I'll stay for a couple minutes.
Okay. So again, if whether you switch it off or not, we're staying on our spotlight to be able to see the slideshow, which I'll put back up again. And here we go. So in secondary, as I was saying, we have classes of 15, and where students attend in the morning, and that's doing one course. Let's say they're course number 1, and then they do course number 2 in the afternoon. But this is in a alternating format. So if I'm in cohort 1, then I would have my one class Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday morning, and of that one class, and then I switch. Sorry, that's in the morning. In the afternoon, I have my second course. Thursday and Friday, it switches. So my morning and afternoon is switched. If Stuart's in the B cohort, he's got the other way around, where he's doing his course in the virtually in the morning. Oh, sorry, I'm gonna get this wrong. We all do virtual in the afternoon, where he's home in the morning on the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but he's in class Thursday, Friday. So that's where it's the AA, BBB. The next week it switches. So the A group only comes Monday, Tuesday, the B group Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So in the end, the students still get their full, for a full number of instructional minutes. They have to have 120 hours, I believe, in secondary for a course. The next week, when they alternate that, they get the same amount of time across this. And at the end of 10 weeks, they have completed the time and had a split amount of time with their teacher face-to-face. So boards have done a variety of combinations of this to make this work. Depends a lot on the size of your schools, what you can make work, and other parameters that you're trying to work around. So that's in our elementary and secondary. Our CPP classes, though, attend for a full day in secondary. So we were pretty intentional about that. And then finally, our transitions. We did a number of supports for students coming back with special needs. Certainly not all. You know, we have about 12,000 students with an IEP. But our students that were most in need of transitional support, that went on over the last few weeks. Whether that, for some cases, it was virtual, in some cases it was in school, in person, so that went on. And I'll do this next slide and then take some more questions. So also in the section of learning and instruction, all excursions, field trips, all extracurriculars and large gatherings we put on pause. The timetabling has really been built to limit the number of teachers per class or cohort. So the you wouldn't see some of the same assignments and involvement in teachers in a class that you might have seen last year. So for example, where you might have, for a grade 7 student, they may have had half a dozen teachers through the course of their week teaching a wide variety of subjects. You're not seeing that this year because, number one, the students don't move. They stay in the same room for the whole year, at least the whole period of time right now, and the teachers come and go. And therefore, we're trying to limit the number of teachers so that, again, it limits exposure. You see that going on. And then in the virtual schools, which you may have more questions as we go along, this is where I mentioned about the ministry being pretty specific about the amount of synchronous learning time. So I've done a screenshot here of the language right out of the ministry doc that talks about the number of minutes of synchronous time that students in these grades would get with their teachers. This doesn't mean the teacher is directly interacting with the students every moment during those 180 or 225 minutes. I'm sure you can appreciate that's because that doesn't happen in a regular school day either. But they are available and interacting. It may be whole class at some points. It may be small group. It may be one-on-one sometimes, but they are that occurs during those 225 minutes. And then the other 300 minutes is still activities and learning that students are assigned to do during that time as well. All as part of that virtual time. So I'm looking for other questions about learning and instruction. So Allison, you asked about elementary class size. So the elementary class size is, we're maintaining that the same as we would virtually as we would in the other. The ministry expects us to keep within our ratios that they would articulate, which vary from, primary to junior going up. So those are still being adhered to.
I actually, Mark, I can tell the average class size at primary is 18.
Oh, wow.
We have some classes that are above that, but the average has turned. Now, sorry, that might be revised because in the last couple of weeks, a few more students have opted to go into the virtual school. But as of a week and a half ago, the average for primary was around 18. sorry, not the average. Most of our classes were at 18 because we still had some that were over 20, but none over 23. So when I say primary, I'm saying grades 1 to 3.
Yeah.
And then our other, as Mark said, we are in compliance with what we always had to do, and it's about 24 for 4 to 6. I'm don't quote me on these because I might have these incorrect, but they are relative to what they always were. But that may change, as I said, because the last week and a bit we've had more requests to go virtual given the rise in some COVID cases, and we've tried to accommodate. We can't accommodate them all, and we've had to move forward with what we have now. So.
Thanks, Stuart. I mentioned earlier, I think before you came on, Stuart, that this is proving to be very expensive for boards. And, you know, if for any of you that have children in primary, you might say, wow, that's great if the classes are down around 18. That's great from a, student-teacher ratio standpoint, but wow, is that expensive as a board. If, we have hundreds of primary classes. So if they're all sitting, a lot of them down around 18, that's going to be hundreds of thousands or even millions for us to be with our class sizes that low. So it's good and bad when you have that kind of thing happen. James, you have a question about computers. It's do we have a policy around the student use and cleaning in between? So our preference is that students use their own devices because that negates the need for cleaning. But if they do need to share, then there is a cleaning protocol for that before they're used by others. And I think, Margot, it looks like your question was answered. So Allison, you're asking about classes of 30. We can double check that. If you can appreciate, classes just opened. And what normally happens in any school year is we open, and what happens every year is kids aren't always where we thought they would be. We usually get pretty close. Our planning department is great and is able to do a lot of that, but sometimes it's not what we think it is, and this year especially. So each year we start, see where our students actually show up, and then we have to do a reorganization where we need to add some teachers to some schools because their classes are too big, and in some cases we have to take teachers because their classes are too small and we need those teachers elsewhere. And sometimes even within a school, you don't need to take or add teachers, but the principal needs to shuffle because you have some classes too big or too small. So that will happen. I don't know. Normally we do it at the end of the first week. I'm not sure if we're doing that this week, partly because things have been so crazy. But we want to do, if we're going to do it, we always like to do it pretty early in the year because we know it's less of an upheaval for people if we do it early. So that will be coming. And I don't see another question there, I don't think. So, and I see Stuart has gone off to his other meeting. Okay.
Mark, if I could just chime in, the explanation of the secondary schedule, I know that at one of the special board meetings, the trustees received a really good kind of a pictorial depiction of what that schedule looks like. So I'm wondering if we can locate that and share it with SEAC members so they have a better understanding. And just in short, it is quadmesters, so 4 terms in a year. Each term is 2 subjects. The term goes for 10 weeks, and students will be taking 1 subject in the morning and another in the afternoon, and those subjects will rotate on a weekly basis. So what's in the morning in the first week will be afternoon in the second week, and so on. Cohorts A and B refer to the cohort of 15 students. So the class is broken up into 2 cohorts of 15, with cohort A being designated for Monday, Tuesday, alternate Wednesdays, and cohort B being designated for Thursday, Friday, and alternate Wednesdays for the morning instruction. So I just wanted to clarify that, because I know that's a very confusing scheduling. Thank you.
Nicely done, Joanna. You can do the rest of the presentation.
Well, just being a mom of a secondary student, I had to explain that in our family.
And why can't I see how to make this any larger? Can everyone see my screen there with the, I'm taking this right out of our reopening guide.
Yes, we can see it.
Why can't I make this larger? I'm not seeing any functionality to do that. Anyway, so this shows what Joanna was just talking about. There's a lot of detail here that I'm not expecting people to go through, but you can see these 2 parts here show the morning, depending on what course you're in, right? Cohort A here, and then B, and then the second course for everybody in the afternoon, and then you can see the weeks 2, 3, all the way up to 10, how the 2 groups alternate. So thanks for that, Joanna. So for each course, as a student, you will see your teacher face-to-face on alternating weeks. Okay. I'm not seeing any more questions, so I'm going to go back to my slide deck. And here we go. So, well-being, our next area of focus. So we pulled together a large number of resources for students, families, and staff that have been posted both on the board website and within our internal staff site as well. So lots of resources there for people to draw upon. We made this a real focus on the reopening, that staff weren't digging into curriculum or any of that to start, that instead they really focus on getting to know their students, building relationships, talking about the pandemic, allowing students to express their experiences during the first 6 weeks and also their feelings, and what that looked like, felt like for them, and knowing that how important that was for students and their mental health coming back in. So also giving staff an opportunity to identify students who might be really struggling and need some other supports, right away when they come in. So that focus was key for us and continues to be. And then we have a tiered approach to mental health. So broad supports across the first tier for all students in all classes, and then more specialized and focused as the needs increase. Also in the well-being, I mentioned about those transition supports for students. That's still going on for some students who need a more either gradual or intentional or specific plan for their transition back to school. We know that most students will transition back in quite easily and well, but students of some specific profiles will need more support. Lots of professional learning opportunities for staff, both in the spring and summer and then ongoing this fall. And then, we're careful to make sure our connections with our community partners are in place, knowing that they are an important support for families as well. So those are all in motion. Any questions about supporting well-being? No, I'll keep going. Technology. So this was a real focus for us in the spring because we put out so much technology to make sure that students were well supported at home. We had a very, very, very small number of students that may have still had difficulties with the tech that they had or their internet connectivity. So we found a lot of solutions for that. And it was, for most families, a non-issue. So making sure that our platforms were accessible. We had our own needs to be addressed as a SEAC committee. I think that was a good learning experience for us. And what we did there and our conversations with one of our members and making sure that the meetings were accessible for everybody was a good example of the same kinds of things that we're doing for our students. So that kind of specific support is going on. Oh, sorry. I mentioned earlier about our learning management systems, making sure that these are really solid and able to support all of our learning platforms for our students. The one platform in secondary, Brightspace, which is supported through the ministry, crashed for the whole province, I think on Friday. So that was not a great start, but at the same time, you can appreciate the volume, right? We have 2 million students in Ontario. So a lot of students were on Friday, and but from what I've heard, the system has been doing well this week. And then obviously a focus on privacy and security is so important as well. Any questions on technology? Seeing none, moving on to students with special needs. So now to look at what the numbers here show here. So we have about, and I have this number wrong. That's not 18,000. That should be about 10,000. We have about 12,000 IEPs. Sorry, I've been working on this late into the afternoon today. That's actually should be 10,000. About 10,000 of our students with IEPs have remained in the regular schools, and you can see just over 2,000 here students in the virtual schools with IEPs. So the larger percentage have students have stayed in the in-person schools for whatever those reasons might be. I think we know that a number of students with IEPs had some difficulties, certainly not all, but a number of them had difficulties with the online platform in the spring. So I think that would weigh into families' decisions on this. Now I'll go on to our second slide here. So all the supports and services that we have delivered in the past for students with special needs are continuing this fall, both virtually and overseas will continue, partly because of limiting contact and proximity, partly because of accessibility. So, but once again, they'll all be continuing. And then lots of things have gone into supporting staff and will continue to help them to be able to support students through these challenges. So, because this is all new for everybody. So we're certainly doing our best with all of this. There's a lot more about Spec Ed, but I thought, wow, I've got so much I've said at the beginning, so I thought I better not put any more into our slideshow today. And because this is going to be at least part of my superintendent update every month, because I'm sure you can appreciate this as an ongoing area of focus for us. And I'm sure that SEAC wants to hear about it. So I'm going to stop there. Other questions? I see none. So I guess I'll stop there, and I'm going to hand it back to Lou and Joanna.
Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you. If you would like to go onto the speakers list, you need to indicate that in the chat box.
So we are now at item 3.1.
Has a comment next or question. You there, Deirdre?
Yes, I'm just trying to make all my technology work here. I know that it's been very difficult and busy trying to get everything virtual and online. And you've received quite a few emails from myself and also from a lot of our families of gifted learners. And I just wanted to thank you and let you know how relieved and appreciative they are to see that there is gifted cohorts and grouping online today. There was lots of online chatter and lots of communication happening, seeing that their children were being enrolled in self-contained gifted learning online. They were very happy to see that happening, and that their children weren't going to be kind of off on their own in an unknown environment. So they're very appreciative and happy to see that. And I just wanted to express a thank you and let you know that means a lot to the community and to them. So yeah, really appreciate that.
Thanks for that, Deirdre.
Yeah.
I'd be remiss in not thanking the trustees. They've been great partners with staff all the way through this. We've met with trustees many times and gathered their input. You know, they bring great community perspective to our discussions. And so we've had extra meetings with trustees, you know, through last spring into the summer, trying to get the budget passed, and then, you know, through some parts of the summer and again this fall, and had a lot of support from the trustees in doing all this work as well. So I'd be remiss not to thank them also.
Yeah, there may be some parents that reach out to you that haven't chosen virtual learning because there was that chance that their child would not be within a community, that they felt that that peer-to-peer community was a big part of what their child needed for social emotional, especially at this time during COVID, that connection. So they were opting for in-person learning. Whether or not you'll see that, I don't know, but just a heads up. I know that I've spoken to a couple of parents that said, you know, we opted to do in-person because we didn't feel we had a choice. So I don't know if you'll hear from them, but because now their children are in classrooms and I don't know if they'll disrupt that. But just, yeah, so it's great to see it. And you've eased a lot of anxiety and nerves. So it's really appreciative to the board. And yeah, so I wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Thanks, Deirdre. If there's no other questions, do you want me to go on to my superintendent's report? Okay, it's brief.
Yeah.
So that went out to you last week. I think it went out Friday. I'm just trying to find it here. So I kept it short, knowing that you'd be hearing a lot from me during the reopening presentation. So just briefly about the Nelson facility, we're really worried about that being open on time because the construction for that school was held up, just like construction pretty well across North America has been held up, with plant shutdowns and construction sites closed and suppliers not being able to get things, etc. So, but the Nelson CPB did get opened in time, and we were able to do some good transition work with our students and families there. And hopefully you had a chance to look at that video. It was made, you know, pretty quickly, just to give people a sense of what the new space looks like. Pretty fantastic space.
Mark?
Yep.
That's Margot. Sorry, I'll put my camera on too. I have the video because I had spoken with Joanna. I didn't know if you wanted to show it. I can share my screen if you do.
Well, it got sent out on Friday, Margot. So I think
Okay.
people would have had a chance to see it. Yeah, thanks. So
you're welcome.
Yeah, so we'll share more as more information is available, but we're really thrilled to have that area ready. And then just sometimes I made a point of mentioning our our CTCC programs. They have another name now, but formerly Section 23, if those of you who know that from the old language. And our Project Search, our partnership at OTMH. Sometimes these are forgotten because they're very small programs, but I thought I'd mention those as well, that they're all up and running, and our kids are back and thriving there as well. So just letting you know those things. I'm not seeing any questions. So I'm done. Back to you,
Thank you,
Liz.
Mark. If there are any questions going forward, please remember to put them in the chat box, and particularly since we are now in the association reports item. So if there's any associations that have presentations or need to talk, please indicate that.
I see that Allison would like to speak on behalf of Learning Disabilities Association, Hamilton Halton.
Hello, and hopefully you can see me. Just to let everybody know, we have converted our programs to online. We are running a number of programs online. So we have a Reading Rocks program that's running starting at the end of September, beginning of October, which is an 8-week, twice-a-week program for an hour each time with vulnerable readers aged 6 to 13. That's being done in association with a number of the different universities and colleges in the area. We'll be acting as tutors in our training program. So that if you have any students for whom that would be with ADHD or learning disabilities, we would love to see them directed. Subsidies are available. We also have a great event coming up. We have a collaboration between all of the chapters in Ontario of the Learning Disabilities Association, and we're doing a province-wide LD and ADHD parent support workshop for back to school on September the 22nd at 6:30 to 9 p.m. and that'll be on Zoom. We have presenters on a choice of 3 key issues: anxiety reduction, executive functioning strategies, and parent advocacy. And then we actually have breakout sessions with school board staff or SEAC representatives to discuss navigating the current special education system in both in-person or online. The cost is $25, but subsidies are available, and people can register online at our website. We will also be conducting workshops on IEPs and IPRCs and navigating the special education system on October the 6th through Google Meet. And this workshop is free as it's part of our LD Awareness Month in October. And registration, again, is online through our website. So we've got a number of great events coming up. We have a number of programs that are starting: social skills, advocacy programs, keyboard programs. So if you need anything, go to our website. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Alison. Is there anyone else? Okay, then we'll move on to 4.3, trustee report. Over to you, Joanna.
Okay, thank you. All right, so the Board of Trustees continued to meet throughout the summer months. In addition to a number of subcommittee meetings, there was also special meetings of the board. The recordings of these meetings are available on the hdsb.ca website. Of particular interest may be the meetings of July 15th and 22nd, when the HDSB budget was presented and discussed. A summary of the key elements of the budget as relating to SEAC was shared with you all a few weeks ago by email. Another special board meeting of interest will be the meeting of August 19th, when trustees had a very lengthy discussion about all the aspects related to reopening of schools. On August 27th, the HDSB held a town hall for the HDSB community about reopening of schools and the type of scheduling that our elementary and secondary students can expect. At this town hall, the medical officer of health for Halton region, Dr. McGanny, spoke about the pandemic and the necessary health and safety protocols required to be in place in each of our schools to help ensure a safe return to school for our students and staff. I will also draw your attention to 2 new sections of the HDSB website. The Reopening of Schools Plan page, where you will have access to all the information relating to reopening of schools and related updates, frequently asked questions, etc., as well as the COVID-19 advisory page, where you will be able to find timely data about any reported cases of COVID-19 by school, and where you will find links to municipal, provincial, and national sources of information. So it's a great resource all around. I also would like to remind our HDSB families, and in particular, those families new to the school board, to download the hdsb.ca app, where all the relevant information and messages are available at the click of a button. And just to remind all of you what that looks like, I'm going to log in here. It is one of these pages so that you can download to your iPhone or iPad, and at the click of a button, you'll have access to a number of icons related to transportation, messages, what's happening at the board. There's even some videos here. So a great resource as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We are now moving on to item 4.4, committee reports. And I'm aware that as this is the start of the school year, many of these committees may not have yet. However, if one of you has an update, please mention that or raise your hand in the chat box, and I'll keep my eye on that. Okay. Well, if you think of something, please raise your, put your hand or put the information in the chat box. But if not, then I'll move along to item 5.0 with respect to the next agenda. And Joanna, will you speak to this item?
Sure. Wanted to remind everyone, all the association reps, that if you would like to make a presentation about the work of your association, that is very welcomed, and we'd be happy to see that and accommodate that in our next agenda, whether it's for October, November, whatever. And also, Mark, I'm not sure, was there any outstanding items, kind of educational, instructional pieces that that are on our list that we could be considering?
So we were hoping to do, I think we mentioned a few times that we'd like to do a presentation on Project Search, the our new partnership, excuse me, our new partnership that we started last year with OTMH. We have some real success stories to talk about there, so we'd like to do that. And then also our summer learning and summer mental health supports that we provided. We have some real support successes to talk about there as well. So we were hoping that those 2 presentations, we would have staff join us and do presentations about those. So if that's okay with SEAC, that's where we'll go in October.
And SEAC members, does anybody have any suggestions for us to consider for any of the upcoming agendas? Okay, if you happen to think of anything, please email us, and we will take that into consideration as we draft the next agenda. Thank you.
Well, we have exhausted our agenda. But before we adjourn, on behalf of SEAC, Joanna and I would like to wish all the students and families a safe and happy return to school. And if there's nothing else, I now call this meeting adjourned. Thank you all for joining us.